War can do strange things to people. The horrors of battle leave mental and physical scars that some people never recover from. Throughout history, there have been battles that have turned the tides, that have decided what country or empire would go on to dominate the world. Even battles that changed what languages were spoken in entire regions. But there have also been battles with unexplained phenomena. Entire legions disappearing, ghost planes, stuff that simply hasn't been explained. From Bigfoot in Vietnam to a battle stopped by Meteor, to one that was fought against UFOs. Here are some of the creepiest mysteries of the world's greatest battles. Foo Fighters, not the band. You might have heard about the U.S. government's recently declassified documents surrounding unidentified flying objects, which they like to call unidentified aerial phenomenon. It was a whole thing.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Part of the drama was the fact that several Air Force pilots reportedly saw strange objects in the sky moving in ways that defied physics. Well, back before there were cameras on aircraft, pilots during World War II, they were apparently seeing the same types of things all around Europe. The strange objects that they were seeing were called Foo Fighters, a term coined by a radar operator in the U.S. Air Force 415th Night Fighter Squadron, and not in fact the band. Dave Grohl wasn't even born yet. According to reports in 1944, Donald J. Myers saw 8 to 10 bright orange lights in the sky as he was flying with the rest of his crew. They dipped and dived in ridiculous ways. They disappeared and appeared later miles away. Myers and the rest of the crew were dumbfounded. Myers would later nickname the unexplained objects Foo Fighters, which was just a nonsense word used in a popular comic strip at the time called Smokey Stover. Over the course of the war, Axis and Allied pilots alike kept seeing these unexplained things in the sky. The sightings varied in appearance and behavior, but most were described as glowing spheres or orbs of light that would follow planes, sometimes for quite a while. Some reports describe the objects as having a metallic appearance or making a humming sound, just like the most recent sightings that have received a lot of press in recent years. These World War II versions were also able to perform maneuvers that were impossible for known aircraft at the time, such as sudden changes in direction or rapid acceleration. And they appeared in one of the most significant battles of the war, the Battle of the Bulge. Fought towards the end of the war in December 1944, it was the largest and a brutal battle fought by the U.S. Army. It was also the last major German offensive campaign of the war. During the battle, a few Allied pilots reported seeing our strange Foo Fighters. They were apparently seen all over the place over the course of the battle, confusing and mystifying both sides. Now, according to reports, the Foo Fighters appeared as glowing balls of light that would follow the planes, darting and zigzagging through the sky. The objects were often described as being red, orange, or green, and were said to be able to keep up with the planes despite their high speeds and rapid maneuvers. In some cases, the objects would suddenly disappear without any explanation. The sightings were reported by pilots from different units and were taken seriously enough by the military that an investigation was launched. But despite their best efforts, no one could figure out exactly what the objects were. Some people thought the objects might have been some kind of secret weapon being tested out by Germans, while others, unsurprisingly, brought up possible extraterrestrial origins. In the years since the war, more possible explanations have been floated out there, including ball lightning and possible psychological hallucinations due to the stress of battle and fatigue experienced by the pilots during long flights. Are the Foo Fighters the same mysterious objects that are still being seen today? And a more pressing question, can Dave Grohl write a song about them? The Battle of Los Angeles, not the Rage Against the Machine album. The Battle of Los Angeles might just be the only battle in history fought between one side and apparently nobody. Coming off the heels of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. was understandably a bit paranoid about another Japanese attack, but they went a bit off the rails a few months later when they began firing at nobody. Here's what went down.
Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment. But more costly to Japan was the effectiveness of its foul attack in immediately unifying America in its determination to fight and win the war thrust upon it. and to win the peace that will follow.
It all started on the night of February 24, 1942. It was just a few months after the surprise Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and American paranoia was at a pretty justified high. At some point, though, someone thought they saw something. The commanding general of the Western Defense Command, General John L. DeWitt, ordered a blackout of the city and the mobilization of anti-aircraft defenses in response to reports of an enemy attack. The air raid siren sounded, and searchlights scanned the sky in search of enemy aircraft. At around 2:30 a.m., radar operators reported an unidentified target approaching the city from the ocean. The target was apparently also spotted by observers on the ground, and anti-aircraft guns began firing at it. Over the course of the next few hours, more than 1,400 rounds of artillery were spat out at the alleged object, lighting up the sky and causing widespread panic among LA's residents. Despite the intense barrage of artillery, no evidence of any enemy aircraft was ever found, and the actual case of the incident remains a mystery. Some eyewitnesses reported seeing multiple objects in the sky, while others claimed that the object was a single large craft. The event was initially reported as an enemy air raid by the U.S. military and the media, with some newspapers even claiming that a Japanese aircraft had been shot down. But this was just a World War II version of today's fake news. It was later revealed that no enemy planes had been detected on radar, and there was no evidence of any aircraft wreckage or debris. Theories about what actually happened during this one-way battle have swirled over the years. Some think that the incident was a case of mass hysteria brought on by the fear and uncertainty of the war. Others suggest that the object seen in the sky may have been a weather balloon, a misidentified aircraft, or even a secret military experiment. There are still some who think the Battle of Los Angeles was actually connected to the Pearl Harbor attack, and that the object seen in the sky was actually a Japanese aircraft sent to bomb the city. There really isn't much concrete evidence to support this theory, but some have pointed to reports of Japanese submarines off the coast of California around the time of the incident, which leads to possible evidence of a Japanese presence in the area. There were, in fact, Japanese subs off the coast of California. Just a day before the mysterious Battle of Los Angeles, they had fired a few shells at an oil refinery in Elwood oil field off the coast of Santa Barbara. The attack only caused minor damage, but it probably contributed to the mysterious ghost battle that occurred the next night. Hannibal's Ghost. Hannibal was perhaps one of the greatest Carthaginian generals in history. The Carthaginians were experts at dissevering up an opposing army, as Hannibal from Silence of the Lambs was at cutting up the meat of lambs. They were lambs, right? Definitely not people, right? The filet mignon of Hannibal's, the General Hannibal's career, probably came in 216 at the Battle of Cannae in what's now southeast Italy during the Second Punic War. The battle has gone down as one of the greatest tactical masterpieces in military history. Hannibal's army was significantly outnumbered by the Roman forces, with estimates ranging from 50,000 to 80,000 Roman soldiers against approximately 40,000 Carthaginians. To make matters worse, Hannibal's army was made up of a mix of soldiers from different cultures and nations with varying levels of experience and training. But Hannibal's strategic genius allowed him to turn these disadvantages into strength. He knew that the Romans relied heavily on their infantry, so he hatched a plan to draw the Romans into a trap by using his cavalry and light infantry to lure them into a large enclosed space with their flanks exposed. Gotta watch those flanks. A tactic that Genghis Khan and the Mongols would mirror more than a millennium later as they rampaged across Asia, albeit mostly all on horseback. Once the Romans were trapped, Hannibal ordered his infantry to close in on the Roman lines from all sides, surrounding and crushing them. The Roman infantry, with their heavy armor and weapons, couldn't maneuver in the tight space and were put to cease en masse. It's estimated that up to 70,000 Roman soldiers were killed or captured, and only a few thousand managed to escape. It was a remarkable victory, but the strange part is the legend that sprang up afterwards, called the legend of Hannibal's Ghost. Maybe feeling a bit butthurt by their defeat, the Romans created a legend that goes like this. Every 216 years, the ghost of the famed Carthaginian general comes back to haunt the site of the Battle of Cannae. According to the legend, Hannibal is cursed to wander the battlefield until the planet Saturn completes a full orbit. It's based on the ancient Roman belief in the influence of the 7 classical planets on human affairs, which included Saturn. In Roman astronomy, it was believed that Saturn's orbit took about 29.5 years, so the number 216 was arrived at by multiplying the length of Saturn's orbit by the number of classical planets, including the Sun and Moon. The legend goes on to say that on the anniversary of the battle, which is August 2nd,
Hannibal's Ghost can be seen riding a white horse along the banks of the river that runs through the battlefield, with his army of ghosts following behind him. It's also said that if anyone sees Hannibal's Ghost, they're doomed to enter the afterworld soon afterward. The battle that changed language.
What if I told you that there was a battle that changed the course of language throughout the European continent? Seems like an important battle, right? One whose site would be known and marked for its significance. Unfortunately, we don't know where this battle took place, but its aftershock is still felt and spoken today.
The Battle of Teutoburg Forest in 8 AD was one of the worst defeats in Roman history, and it's seen as a turning point in the Roman Empire's relationship with the Germanic people. The battle was fought in Teutoburg Forest, a dense forested area in what's now Germany. The Roman forces were marching to consolidate their control over the region, but they were caught off guard by an ambush by the Germanic tribes. The defeat of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest had pretty significant consequences for the Roman Empire. The Romans were forced to abandon their plans to annex the Germanic territories, and instead, they focused on securing their existing borders. The Roman Empire's northern expansion was effectively halted, and this allowed Germanic and Scandinavian languages to continue to develop and spread throughout the region instead of Latin.
If the Roman forces had not been defeated that day, there's a good chance that people in Scandinavia and Germany could be speaking Italian today. And there's even the butterfly effect type possibility that English would not have spread the way it did.
Despite its significance, the exact location of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest remains a mystery. The dense forested area and lack of written records from the Germanic tribes make it difficult to figure out exactly where the battle took place. Archaeologists and historians continue to search for the location of the battle, but it remains undiscovered to this day. The Lost Legion.
How do 6,000 soldiers simply disappear? Do they all decide that war isn't worth it and walk off into the sunset, never to be heard from again? Are they defeated so soundly that their bodies are never recovered and the battlefield is lost to history? Or is it something more mundane, like a 2,000-year-old lapse in paperwork?
The disappearance of Rome's Ninth Legion has been a topic of mystery and speculation for centuries. The story of the Lost Legion was popularized by the historical novel The Eagle of the Ninth by Rosemary Sutcliffe back in 1954. Now, according to the novel, the Ninth Legion was stationed in Britain in the 2nd century AD and was led by a young Roman officer named Marcus Aquila. In AD 117, the legion marched north of Hadrian's Wall, the northernmost boundary of Roman Britain, and disappeared without a trace. Marcus Aquila, the main character of the book, sets out on a quest to find out what happened to the legion and recover its lost eagle standard. There is certain historical evidence that implies the Ninth Legion did vanish in Britain right about 117 AD, despite the fact that the book is fiction. The Roman historian Tacitus mentioned in his book Annals that the legion was lost in a campaign against the Caledonians, the people inhabiting modern-day Scotland. But the actual fate of the Ninth Legion is still debated among historians. Some have suggested that the legion was actually just transferred to another part of the Roman Empire and its disappearance was exaggerated and misunderstood, kind of like how Paul Bunyan grew into a giant. Others have speculated that the legion were killed in battle or suffered from disease or starvation. In recent years, archaeological evidence has shed some light on the fate of the Ninth Legion. Inscriptions at an old Roman legionary base in the Netherlands suggest that the Ninth might have been stationed there after 120 AD. One of them simply says that the legion was there. Another refers to a soldier from the Ninth who was stationed there. A third mentions the legion by name and says that it participated in some campaigns in the region, dating inscriptions that are nearly 2,000 years old to prove that the legion was or wasn't there before or after 120 AD is a tricky thing though, and questions still swirl. Other archaeological evidence has suggested that the Ninth Legion may have been sent to the Middle East or other parts of the Roman Empire. But there's still no concrete answer as to what happened to the legion, and the mystery remains unsolved. The Vanished Battalion.
A more modern version of the Lost Legion took place during World War I. This time a lot fewer men went missing, but it happened a little over 100 years ago as opposed to nearly 2,000 years ago. The mystery of Celtic Wood, as it's become known, might be the most mysterious case of soldiers gone missing in modern warfare.
It started with the Battle of Polkapelle, which was fought on October 9, 1917 in Belgium. During the battle, the 10th Battalion of the Australian Imperial Force was assigned to capture the heavily defended Celtic Wood near the village of Passchendaele in Flanders. The 10th Battalion managed to capture the wood but suffered heavy casualties in the process. The battalion was then ordered to hold the position against German counterattacks. But when backup came to relieve them, they found no sign of the battalion. 71 men had disappeared, leaving behind only abandoned equipment and empty trenches. And that 71 is depending on who you believe. Other reports claim that 37 men disappeared. The discrepancy has been chalked up to clerical errors in reporting missing soldiers. Apparently, the term missing can be interpreted in different ways on the battlefield. Some reports may have used the term to refer only to soldiers whose bodies could not be recovered, while others may have included soldiers who were captured or lost in the chaos of battle. Searches of the area were conducted, but no trace of the 10th was found. Some soldiers reported hearing faint cries for help coming from underground, leading to speculation that the battalion had been put to premature burial in German countermines. But later searches of the area didn't uncover any evidence of this. To this day, the fate of the soldiers of the 10th Battalion remains a mystery. Theories abound, ranging from the battalion being captured and killed by the Germans to the possibility that they were simply lost in the chaos of battle. However, despite extensive investigations, no conclusive evidence has ever been found to explain their disappearance.
Vietnamese Bigfoot? Bigfoot gets around. Sightings of the legendary creature inhabit the folklore countries all over the world. You've got Bigfoot/Sasquatch in North America. You've got the Yeti in the Himalayas, the Yowie in Australia, the Almas in the Caucasus. There are even rainforest versions, the Mapinguari in the Amazon, and the Orang Pendek in Indonesia. And there were apparently multiple sightings of one in Vietnam during the Vietnam War.
The creature in question has been dubbed the rock ape or the batutut. They've been described as being roughly human-sized and covered in reddish-brown or black fur and stalk the jungles of Vietnam. Most of the sightings of these mysterious rock apes were by U.S. troops stationed in the jungles during the war, and they reportedly made cameos in a couple of battles, including the Battle of Tam Quan in 1965 and the Battle of Quezon in 1968. But one of the strangest accounts came from a 1966 battle at a place called Hill 868 in Quang Nam Province. The Marine unit stationed there reportedly saw movement in the brush nearby and assumed it was Viet Cong, but it quickly became clear that it was a group of 6-foot-tall ape-like creatures covered in hair with long arms and muscles that would make Arnold Schwarzenegger blush.
Things get weirder from here. Instead of using the guns they clearly had available, the soldiers, for whatever reason, decided it was a better idea to throw rocks at the rock apes. The plan backfired, though, as the rock apes picked up the rocks and started throwing them back at the soldiers, who were forced to retreat.
When support arrived, they found a bunch of injured soldiers and apparently a couple of rock apes, but there's no photographic evidence that they actually ever existed. In any event, the incident became known as the Battle of Dong Dinh. It's a story that has been told and retold by soldiers who served in Vietnam, but there isn't much hard evidence to support its veracity. Some have suggested that the creatures may have been misidentified or mutated primates, while others believe it could have been soldiers in makeshift ghillie suits. Whatever they were, the story of the Battle of Dong Dinh has become part of the lore of the Vietnam War and the legends of the rock ape. There are also stories that the rock ape is a supernatural creature, with some Vietnamese soldiers believing that they were guarding sacred sites in the jungle. Some U.S. soldiers even reported that the rock ape had supernatural powers, like the ability to disappear or to create illusions, kind of like an abracadabra thing.
Pearl Harbor Mysteries. These next two are mysteries surrounding the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Well, one of them is a mystery. The other is what you could call an eerie premonition. Maybe one of the only things more frightening than a battle is the fact that someone can predict exactly how that battle would unfold. Let's start with the guy who predicted the Pearl Harbor attack.
Lieutenant Pete Ellis was a Marine Corps officer that had a reputation for being unconventional and unorthodox. He was stationed in Guam in 1915, and in the 1920s he began studying the Pacific and the Japanese, convinced that the U.S. would one day be drawn into a war with Japan. Ellis traveled extensively throughout the Pacific, studying the culture, language, and military tactics of Japan.
In 1921, Ellis wrote a report called Advanced Base Operations in Micronesia, which outlined a scenario for a surprise Japanese attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet anchored in Pearl Harbor. Unfortunately, Ellis's predictions were not taken seriously at the time. He was a bit of a drunk and suffered from nervous breakdowns and severe depression, so his superiors eventually tagged him with the crazy card. They relieved him of his duties, and they sent him to a mental hospital. He died there in 1923 at the age of 42, never knowing that his predictions were deadly accurate.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, Ellis's report was rediscovered and it was found to be remarkably accurate. The report predicted the time and location of the attack, the use of aircraft carriers, and the tactics employed by the Japanese. It's now considered to be one of the most important intelligence reports in American history. In addition to Pearl Harbor, Ellis also basically predicted the entirety of World War II's Pacific Theater, nearly 20 years before it happened. To top it off, he's also been dubbed the prophet of amphibious warfare for his work developing the tactics that were eventually used in World War II. Some of the craziest people are often the most brilliant. Then there's the story of the mysterious ghost plane that appeared in the sky and then crashed near Pearl Harbor a year and a day after the infamous attacks. At first, radar operators were concerned that the aircraft was Japanese, but it was a lone plane flying in a way that could only be described as aimless. When intercepting planes went out to investigate, they found out that it was actually an American P-40, the same type of plane that was used by the U.S. to defend Pearl Harbor the year prior. It was in bad shape. It was riddled with bullets, it didn't have landing gear. The intercepting pilots reportedly saw the pilot of the derelict aircraft slumped over the controls. It then crashed, and a rescue team was sent to the site, but there was no sign of the pilot, and all they could find was a diary that indicated the plane was stationed on the island of Mindanao, some 1,300 miles away in the Pacific Ocean. A mystery for sure, but it was maybe one that was inspired by a work of fiction. The story is a whole lot similar to the first chapter of a book called Damn to Glory, written by Brigadier General and flying ace Robert Lee Scott, who pivoted from fighter pilot to fiction writer after World War II. Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? When a legend picks up steam, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. The battle stopped by a meteor.
Sometimes the heaven sends us signs. Maybe you're into astrology and explain how you feel lethargic because, of course, Mercury is in retrograde. As you wish. But if a meteor nearly falls on your head, and it's over 2,000 years ago, and you believe in gods that throw lightning bolts, you might want to reevaluate some parts of your life and the decisions you're making.
This is basically what happened during the Third Mithridatic War. The war was a spat between Rome and the Kingdom of Pontus in Asia Minor and was fought between 73 BC and 63 BC. It was a pretty standard war as far as wars go, until a meteor entered the mix. According to Plutarch, a Greek historian and biographer, the incident occurred during the Battle of Phrygia in 72 BC. The Roman army, led by Lucius Licinius Lucullus, try saying that 3 times fast, was battling it out with the Pontic army, led by King Mithridates VI. The battle was going, well, like a battle. People were being impaled and punctured and shot with arrows, but then apparently the cosmos decided to intervene. At one point, a meteor suddenly crashed down from the sky and landed in the middle of the battlefield. The impact was so powerful that it created a big old crater and a dust cloud that enveloped the entire area. Both armies were reportedly stunned and confused by the sudden appearance of the meteor, and the battle was immediately halted. According to some accounts, the Romans interpreted the meteor as a sign from the gods that they should stop fighting, while others saw it as a bad omen and a sign of impending disaster. Mithridates, on the other hand, reportedly saw the meteor as a sign of his imminent victory and later pressed his advantage. It wasn't a sign of his imminent victory, unfortunately for Mithridates. He eventually lost the war and Rome took control of his kingdom. According to another Greek historian named Appian, Mithridates later tried to take poison but had built up a tolerance for various poisons by taking tiny doses of it to guard against assassination attempts. So instead, he asked one of his bodyguards to run him through with a sword, which was more effective. What other battle mysteries do you know about? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more nutty history.